On June 6, 1944, the world witnessed one of the largest military operations in history, D-Day, the Allied invasion of Normandy. Carefully planned, massively coordinated, risky beyond imagination. But even in such a historic operation, one mistake nearly changed everything, and its consequences reshaped the battlefield. 1. The context. Operation Overlord. D-Day was part of Operation Overlord, the Allied plan to break into Nazi-occupied France. Thousands of ships, aircraft, paratroopers, infantry units were deployed across 5 beaches in Normandy. The entire success of the invasion depended on surprise, timing, coordination. If one part failed, the entire plan could collapse. 2. The weather gamble. One of the biggest risks was weather. Originally, the invasion was scheduled earlier, but rough seas and storm conditions forced commanders to delay by 24 hours. This delay created confusion, but also opportunity. German commanders believed no invasion would happen during bad weather. That belief caused reduced alertness along parts of the coast. But weather would also create problems for the Allies. 3. The paratrooper drop. Confusion. In the early hours before the beach landings, thousands of Allied paratroopers were dropped behind enemy lines. Their mission? Capture bridges, destroy artillery, disrupt German reinforcements. However, heavy clouds, anti-aircraft fire, and navigation errors scattered many paratroopers far from their designated drop zones. Some units landed miles away. Others were isolated. For a moment, it seemed the airborne plan had failed. 4. The mistake that changed everything. Because of confusion and scattered landings, German forces received fragmented and unclear reports. Instead of recognizing a coordinated invasion, they believed it might be small sabotage teams, limited airborne raids, diversions. The chaos created by the scattered paratroopers unintentionally amplified the illusion of uncertainty. German commanders hesitated, and hesitation on D-Day was critical. 5. Delayed German response. German High Command did not immediately commit armored divisions. Why? Confusion about the main landing site, belief that Normandy might be a diversion, waiting for confirmation from higher authority. Those crucial hours gave Allied forces time to secure the beaches. If German Panzer divisions had counterattacked immediately, the beaches could have become death traps. 6. Chaos turned into advantage. What looked like a mistake, scattered airborne units, actually created disruption across a wide area, false signals about invasion size, communication breakdown among German defenders. Small groups of paratroopers improvised. They destroyed bridges, blocked roads, created fear and uncertainty. Sometimes accidents in war create unexpected advantages. 7. The domino effect. Because of delayed reaction, Allied troops established beachheads. Reinforcements arrived safely. Supply lines were secured. Within days, the Allies had a strong foothold in France. From that foothold came the liberation of Paris, the push toward Germany, the eventual collapse of Nazi control in Western Europe. 8. A lesson in war history shows that perfection is rare in warfare. Even the best planned operations face mistakes, miscommunications, chaos. But adaptability can turn disaster into opportunity. The confusion near D-Day did not destroy the invasion. It helped define its success. 9. The sleeping high command. On the night of June 5th to 6th, 1944, many senior German officers believed the bad weather made an invasion impossible. Field Marshal Erwin Rommel, responsible for defending the Atlantic Wall, had actually left France to visit his family in Germany. He believed no invasion would occur in such conditions. Meanwhile, at headquarters, Adolf Hitler was asleep when the invasion began, and no one wanted to wake him. Why? Because only Hitler could authorize the release of key Panzer divisions. Those lost hours became critical. 10. The Panzer delay. German armored divisions were the strongest counterattack force available. If deployed immediately toward the beaches, they could have pushed Allied forces back into the sea, broken fragile beachheads, caused catastrophic losses. But commanders hesitated. Some believed the real invasion would come at Pas-de-Calais, not Normandy. This confusion was strengthened by Allied deception operations, especially Operation Fortitude. Fake tanks, fake radio signals, fake armies. The Germans were waiting for a second invasion that never came. 11. The scattered paratroopers' hidden impact. What looked like a disaster, paratroopers landing in random fields and villages, created total psychological disruption. Small Allied units blew up bridges, cut communication lines, attacked supply routes. German commanders received dozens of conflicting reports. Enemy troops everywhere, large airborne divisions behind us, sabotage across the region. They couldn't tell what was real. The mistake had multiplied confusion. 12. Omaha Beach, the real danger. While delays helped the Allies overall, one beach nearly became a nightmare. At Omaha Beach, American forces faced heavy resistance. German defenses were stronger than expected. For hours, Allied troops were pinned down under machine gun fire. If German reinforcements had arrived quickly, Omaha could have turned into a total failure. But again, hesitation saved the Allies. 13. The power of uncertainty. War is not just about weapons, it's about timing and uncertainty. The scattered airborne landings made German commanders unsure. Was this the main invasion? Was this just a distraction? Should they commit their reserves? That uncertainty paralyzed decision-making. And in war, delay can be fatal. 14. What if it had gone differently? Imagine if Rommel had been present. Hitler had coordinated counterattack in the first 24 hours. The Allies were forced to withdraw. The German advance was unstoppable. The war was lost. The Battle of the Bulge was a turning point in World War II. The Allies regrouped and launched a counteroffensive. The German advance was halted. The war was won. The Battle of the Bulge was a victory for the Allies. The German advance was stopped. The war was over. The Battle of the Bulge was a decisive victory for the Allies. The German advance was defeated. The war was won. The Battle of the Bulge was a turning point in World War II. The Allies regrouped and launched a counteroffensive. The German advance was halted. The war was won. The Battle of the Bulge was a victory for the Allies. The German advance was stopped. The war was over. The Battle of the Bulge was a decisive victory for the Allies. The German advance was defeated. The war was won. The Battle of the Bulge was a turning point in World War II. The Allies regrouped and launched a counteroffensive. The German advance was halted. The war was won. The Battle of the Bulge was a victory for the Allies. The German advance was stopped. The war was over. The Battle of the Bulge was a decisive victory for the Allies. The German advance was defeated. The war was won. The Battle of the Bulge was a turning point in World War II. The Allies regrouped and launched a counteroffensive. The German advance was halted. The war was won. The Battle of the Bulge was a victory for the Allies. The German advance was stopped. The war was over. The Battle of the Bulge was a decisive victory for the Allies. The German advance was defeated. The war was won. The Battle of the Bulge was a turning point in World War II. The Allies regrouped and launched a counteroffensive. The German advance was halted. The war was won. The Battle of the Bulge was a victory for the Allies. The German advance was stopped. The war was over. The Battle of the Bulge was a decisive victory for the Allies. The German advance was defeated. The war was won. The Battle of the Bulge was a turning point in World War II. The Allies regrouped and launched a counteroffensive. The German advance was halted. The war was won. The Battle of the Bulge was a victory for the Allies. The German advance was stopped. The war was over. The Battle of the Bulge was a decisive victory for the Allies. The German advance was defeated. The war was won. The Battle of the Bulge was a turning point in World War II. The Allies regrouped and launched a counteroffensive. The German advance was halted. The war was won. The Battle of the Bulge was a victory for the Allies. The German advance was stopped. Coordinated counterattack in the first 24 hours might have forced a retreat. D-Day could have failed. And if D-Day failed, the war in Europe might have lasted much longer. 15. The bigger lesson. The mistake wasn't just scattered paratroopers. It was a chain reaction. Weather gamble, communication breakdown, command hesitation, overconfidence, all combining at the most critical moment. History often turns on small delays, small misunderstandings, small human decisions. Near D-Day, one moment of confusion reshaped the course of World War II. 16. Eisenhower's silent burden. Supreme Allied Commander Dwight D. Eisenhower carried the weight of the entire invasion. Before D-Day even began, he had written a secret note, a note accepting full responsibility in case the invasion failed. He believed the operation might collapse. He was prepared to take the blame. That alone shows how uncertain the situation truly was. 17. The reality on the beaches. At Omaha Beach, American forces were nearly destroyed. Landing craft were blown apart. Officers were killed instantly. Units were disorganized. For hours, commanders feared the worst. Reports coming in were incomplete. Some messages suggested total failure. Others said progress was being made. No one knew the full picture. 18. The risk of collapse. If even one major beach had failed completely, it could have exposed the flanks of other landing zones, allowed German forces to isolate Allied troops, forced evacuation. Remember, Dunkirk had already happened once in 1940. The Allies could not afford another disaster. The entire world was watching. 19. German counterattack that never fully came. German forces did respond, but too slowly and without coordination. Panzer divisions began moving only after crucial hours had passed. By then, Allied reinforcements were landing. Naval guns were providing heavy fire support. Beach defenses were being neutralized. The window for pushing the Allies back into the sea was closing. And once that window closed, it never reopened. 20. The turning point. By the end of June 6th, the Allies had established a fragile but real foothold in Normandy. It wasn't a clean victory. It wasn't smooth. It was messy, costly, and chaotic. But it worked. The mistake, scattered airborne troops and early confusion, had created just enough disruption to buy time. Time was the real weapon that day. 21. From beachhead to breakthrough. In the weeks after D-Day, more than 1 million Allied troops landed in France. Supplies poured in. Air superiority expanded. Soon, Paris would be liberated, and the road to Germany would open. All because those first 24 hours did not collapse. 22. Final reflection. History often looks inevitable in hindsight, but on June 6, 1944, nothing was guaranteed. One wrong move, one faster counterattack, one clearer German decision, and the story of Europe might have been very different. Instead, confusion became opportunity, hesitation became defeat, and one mistake helped change everything. 23. The fragile beginning of liberation. The success of D-Day was not a massive breakthrough on day one. It was survival. The Allies held a thin strip of land along the coast. German artillery still fired inland. Snipers still hid in ruins. Counterattacks were expected at any moment, but the line held, and once it held, everything changed. 24. The collapse of the Atlantic Wall. The German defensive system, known as the Atlantic Wall, had been designed to stop any invasion. Yet confusion, delay, and miscalculation weakened its response.
Field Marshal Erwin Rommel had warned that the invasion must be crushed on the beaches, or Germany would lose the war. He was right. Once the Allies secured Normandy, Germany was forced into a defensive war it could not win. 25. The domino effect across Europe. After D-Day, Paris was liberated in August 1944. Allied forces pushed toward Belgium and the Netherlands. Germany faced pressure from both the Western Allies and the Soviet Union in the east.
Initially, the attack achieved surprise and destroyed or damaged hundreds of Allied planes. For a brief moment, it looked like Germany might blunt Allied air dominance. But the victory was hollow. The Luftwaffe lost irreplaceable pilots in the operation. Germany no longer had the fuel or training pipeline to recover. Within weeks, Allied air forces had fully restored their strength, while German air power was permanently crippled. Had Germany preserved its remaining experienced pilots and coordinated the attack more effectively, Allied ground forces during the Ardennes offensive might have faced far greater danger. 7. The Oil War, a battle of fuel, not just aircraft. Air superiority is impossible without fuel. By 1944, Allied planners understood that Germany's true vulnerability was oil. The bombing of the Ploiesti oil fields and synthetic fuel plants devastated the German war machine. Without aviation fuel, pilots could not train. Aircraft could not fly. Jets like the Me-262 were grounded. The air war became an industrial and logistical contest. Germany's aircraft factories were still producing planes, but many sat idle without fuel. If Germany had maintained secure oil supplies, the skies over Europe in 1944 to 45 might have looked very different. 8. Allied overconfidence and heavy losses. Even at the height of Allied power, losses remained severe. German anti-aircraft defenses, flak, were extraordinarily dense around industrial targets. Night fighters harassed RAF bombing raids. U.S. bomber crews faced staggering casualty rates in 1943 to 44. In some units, survival through a full tour of missions was statistically unlikely. If those losses had continued at peak rates without the protection of long-range escorts and airfield destruction campaigns, Allied strategic bombing might have been forced to scale back significantly. Air superiority was not a switch that flipped on. It was constantly contested. 9. The Pacific, kamikaze and the desperation phase. By 1944 to 45, Japan could no longer compete in traditional air combat. Instead, it turned to suicide tactics. Kamikaze attacks during battles like Leyte Gulf and Okinawa inflicted severe damage on Allied naval forces. Aircraft carriers and destroyers were struck repeatedly. While these attacks did not restore Japanese air superiority, they demonstrated something important. Even when one side controls the skies, air power can still inflict devastating losses. Had Japan possessed more trained pilots, better aircraft production, and secure oil supplies, the Pacific Air War might have dragged on far longer, potentially delaying or reshaping Allied strategy. 10. The what-if factor. Several factors narrowly prevented an Axis air resurgence. Earlier mass production of German jets, a consistent focus on RAF airfields in 1940, a Japanese victory at Midway, secure Axis oil supplies, more effective coordination between German fighter defenses and anti-aircraft systems. History often appears inevitable in hindsight. In reality, the Allies' control of the skies depended on a series of critical turning points, any of which could have gone differently. The hidden turning points that could have changed everything. By early 1945, Allied air forces seemed unstoppable. Yet history often turns not on what happened, but on what almost happened. Several critical variables, had they shifted slightly, could have dramatically altered the balance in the skies. This final section explores the deeper structural factors that nearly tipped the air war in the Axis' favor. 11. The German jet that came too late. The Messerschmitt Me-262 was decades ahead of its time. It was nearly 100 miles per hour faster than the best Allied fighters. In combat, it could strike bomber formations with devastating speed and then disappear before escorts could respond. Allied bomber crews feared it. So why didn't it change the war? Several reasons. Late deployment, fuel shortages, pilot inexperience, strategic interference from Adolf Hitler, who initially wanted it used as a bomber. If Germany had introduced the Me-262 in large numbers by 1943, before long-range escorts like the Mustang arrived in force, Allied daylight bombing might have become unsustainable. Air superiority might have fractured. 12. Radar, code breaking, and the intelligence war. Allied dominance was not just about aircraft, it was about information. Britain's early warning radar network, including the chain home system, allowed the RAF to intercept incoming raids efficiently during the Battle of Britain. Even more crucial was intelligence from code breaking at Bletchley Park. The cracking of the German Enigma machine allowed the Allies to anticipate operations, track U-boat positions, and prepare for air attacks. Had Germany improved encryption discipline or neutralized Britain's radar network more effectively, Allied air defenses could have been overwhelmed at key moments. The air war was as much about signals and science as it was about speed and firepower.